Jana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashtota Siddha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashtota Siddha Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 15. Oh. You're pulling it up, Mishwan? Okay. Mitaha Yada Esham Babita Vivadaha Madhu Amadu Atma Atamra Vilochananam Na Esham Vadha Upayaha Iyan Ataha Anyaha Mai Udyate Antaha Dadhate Svayam Sma Mito Yadaisham Bhavita Vivado Mito Yadaisham Bhavita Vivado Madvad Madhva Madatam Ravilochananam Madhva Madatam Ravilochananam Naisham Vadopaya Iyanatonyo Naisham Vadopaya Iyanatonyo Mai Udyaten Tar Dadate Swayam Sma Mai Udyaten Tar Dadate Swayam Sma Mito Yadaisham Bhavita Vivado Madhva Madatam Ravilochananam Naisham Vadopaya Iyanatonyo Mai Udyaten Tar Dadate Swayam Sma Mito Yadaisham Bhavita Vivado Madhva Madatam Ravilochananam Naisham Vadopaya Iyanatonyo Mai Udyaten Tar Dadate Svayam Sma. Please repeat. Matadis. Mito yadaisham bhavita vivado madva madatam ramilochananam naisham vadopaya iyannatunyo mayudyatentar dadate swayam sma. Okay. Mitaha, one another. Yada, when. Esham, of them. Bhavita, will take place. Vivadaha, quarrel. Madhu amadu, intoxication by drinking. Atam ravilochananam, of their eyes being copper red. Na, not. Esham, of them. Vadha upayaha, means of disappearance. Iyan, like this. Ataha, besides this. Anyaha, alternative. Mai, on my. Udyate, disappearance. Antadadate, will disappear. Svayam, themselves. Sma, certainly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. When they quarrel among themselves, influenced by intoxication with their eyes red like copper because of drinking, madhu, then only will they disappear. Otherwise, it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place. Purport. The Lord and His associates appear and disappear by the will of the Lord. They are not subjected to the laws of material nature. No one was able to kill the family of the Lord, nor was there any possibility of their natural death by the laws of nature. The only means, therefore, for their disappearance was the make show of a fight amongst themselves, as if brawling and intoxication due to drinking. That so-called fighting would also take place by the will of the Lord, otherwise there would be no cause for their fighting. Just as Arjuna was made to be illusioned by family affection, and thus the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, so the Yadu dynasty was made to be intoxicated by the will of the Lord, and nothing more. The devotees and associates of the Lord are completely surrendered souls. Thus they are transcendental instruments in the hands of the Lord, and can be used in any way the Lord desires. The pure devotees also enjoy such pastimes of the Lord because they want to see Him happy. Devotees of the Lord never assert independent individuality. On the contrary, they utilize their individuality in pursuit of the desires of the Lord, and this cooperation of the devotees with the Lord makes a perfect scene of the Lord's pastimes. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Pishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadama Hyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitams Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpa Tribhyas Chakra Pasandubi Eva Chapatita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivikasa Swaminiti Namane Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshacharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yasya Devi Prabhaktir Yata Tevi Tatagaro Tasya Te Katitahirata Prakashante Mahatmanaha Vagisha Yasya Vadane Lakshmi Yasya Chavaksasi Yasya Ste Hriye Samvittam Nasimham Mahamaje. Mito yadaisham bhavita vivado madvan matada amra madvad matadamra vilochananam naisham vadopaya iyanatonyo mayudyatentar dadate svayam sma. When they quarrel among themselves, influenced by intoxication with their eyes red like copper because of drinking madhu, then only will they disappear. Otherwise, it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place. So here we are talking about the winding up of Lord Krishna's pastimes on the earth and the way that his dynasty, the Yadu dynasty, left this world. And we learned in the previous class that these Yadus, they were creating an unnecessary burden upon the earth because they were so incredibly strong. Nobody could defeat them, no demigods could defeat them, no demons could defeat them. And so they were just so much more powerful than everyone else. And as it's saying here in the purport, that well, it also says in the translation, only will they disappear. Otherwise, it will not be possible unless they basically all kill each other. So it's a very intense scene, you could say. They're all family, and there's so many of them. How many exactly? So each Krishna had 10 sons with each 16,100 wives, and then was the grandchildren there as well? Or I wasn't able to figure that out. But they were in this battle as well? Oh, yeah, the Holy Land. Yeah, so that was like 1.7 million, something like that. 1.7 million of the strongest, living entities in the universe. They were all fighting each other, and so it's a very intense scene. I was looking through this is chapter 30 of 11th canto, where they kind of go through this battle. I'll just read a couple of things. I won't go through it so much, but so the heroes of the Yadu dynasty became intoxicated from their extravagant drinking and began to feel arrogant. When they were thus bewildered by the personal potency of Lord Krishna, a terrible quarrel arose among them. Infuriated, they seized their bows and arrows, swords, balas, clubs, lances, and spears, and attacked one another on the shore of the ocean. Riding on elephants and chariots with flags flying, and also on donkeys, camels, bulls, buffaloes, mules, and even human beings, the extremely enraged warriors came together and violently attacked one another with arrows, just as elephants in the forest attack one another with their tusks. So it's really intense, and then there's even a part where it speaks of that Krishna was there, and he was seemingly trying to stop it, as it described, but then they started attacking him as well, and then Krishna became angry and Balaram as well, and they started also fighting. And so it's a very, like I said, it's a very intense scene. Krishna doesn't do anything small. Everything he does is big. And so, when he goes out with a bang as well. Yeah, but why is this all happening? I mean, this seems like they're getting drunk and then they're all fighting and killing each other. This seems like something you might see like on the streets, like of a modern American city in the middle of the night is, people go to bars, they get drunk, and then they fight. I know a lot of people like do that. Like they purposely go out looking to fight, and they like to like get intoxicated and go out and just like fight people. And sometimes people end up dead from that. So it seems like some kind of mundane brawl and like very just in the mode of ignorance, you could say. And it seems like, why are they doing this? But we understand through Bhagavatam and through this particular purport that they're fighting due to the will of the Lord. Like I said, that the earth was overburdened by this dynasty of these overpowered Yadus, and this is the only way that they were able to leave. So it's simply due to the will of the Lord, and it's not that these Yadus decided, okay, like let's go get really drunk right now, and like it's not like they just did it of their own volition and decided to go get very intoxicated and somehow got angry and got influenced by material nature in some way. But it's all the pastimes of the Lord. It's all within the plan of the Lord. And they were simply, as Prabhupada is describing here in the purport, they were simply acting as instruments in this situation. They acted as instruments in many other ways. They went and fought. I'm forgetting this, but when I'm terrible with names. When one of Krishna's sons or grandsons was kidnapped by this demigoddess and then kept captive, and then they went and had this battle with Lord Shiva was there. Aniruddha, yeah. So they went and had this battle, and that's also described as a very, fantastic seen, and all the demigods came to see that. And so the Yadus had been assisting in Krishna's pastimes, and they all, of course, accompanied Krishna to the earth to assist with his pastimes. And now it was time to leave. It's time to go back to their eternal abode. And Krishna was leaving, so he's taking all of his associates with him. And we see this also in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, that when he wound up his pastimes here, his associates also all very quickly left this world pretty quickly after that. It's not that they just stuck. I mean, some stuck around, like Rupa Goswami, and some of the Goswamis stuck around to write literatures and continue on the mission. But many of his associates just immediately left as soon as Lord Chaitanya left, because their service was done here for the time being, and they were going on to continue being with Lord Chaitanya. So this is kind of the context of why this is happening. Like I said, they're instruments, and they're doing this all according to the will of the Lord simply. They're not acting of their own volition and getting drunk, like I said. Let's see. So, we see here that, again, these Yadus are being placed under illusion. You could say they're being placed under this illusion of intoxication by the will of Krishna. And we see in other places that Krishna can do this to his devotees. He can place them under a specific illusion in order to facilitate his pastimes. And the example mentioned here is that Arjuna, just as Arjuna was made to be illusioned by family affection, and thus the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, so the Yadu dynasty was made to be intoxicated by the will of the Lord and nothing more. So, of course, Arjuna, famous story, that he's great warrior, the greatest warrior, and he's on the battlefield about to fight against his own family, and then he becomes bewildered, he becomes illusioned, and of course he was a pure devotee. He wasn't actually under the influence of Maya or anything like that. He wasn't actually illusion, and he was always ready to carry out Krishna's will, but again, just due to the facilitation of the pastimes, and in order to teach us, the conditioned living entities, how to properly surrender to Krishna, this whole conversation took place, and Arjuna was placed under this illusion by Krishna on the battlefield. And so we can also see, Krishna likes doing this because, again, in Vrindavan is another example. He places his devotees under illusion there, under the illusion of Yogamaya, and to where they are unaware that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They're unaware that he is God. And I think it was Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, my Guru Maharaj, speaking on this the other day, that if Mother Yashoda is in Vrindavan, and if Vishnu came and showed up, she would offer obeisances and start worshiping him. But because Krishna is there and she's under this influence of Yogamaya, she doesn't realize that Krishna is the original Vishnu. He's the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, the fountainhead from whom all these other incarnations emanate. And so she's able to treat him just like her own child and chase him with a stick and tie him up with ropes. And this brings a transcendental pleasure to Krishna that, again, he can't taste that if his devotees aren't under this illusion. So all of these different devotees getting illusioned in different ways. Here we have the Yadus being illusioned by getting intoxicated and killing each other, which seems like very, like this is heavy, and dark. And we have Arjuna being illusioned on the battlefield and lamenting, and then Krishna says that you're just like a eunuch right now, and chastises him heavily. And then we have, of course, the devotees in Vrindavan being illusioned under Yogamaya as well, and in order to allow Krishna to taste these different rasas of being the son of his devotee and being under the control of his devotee, being scared of his devotee. And this all allows him to experience these different flavors and the different rasas that he's not able to do if he's just always, Vishnu and always being worshipped in this mood of opulence and adoration and this mood of you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I can see that, and I am fully aware of that, and I'm offering these elaborate prayers, and I'm very submissive and all these things. We see, so there's the the rasa of friendship, parental love, conjugal love, all these things that can't be experienced in this dasya ras. So what does this mean for us, right? So, okay, there's these people fighting and killing each other. Okay, so does that mean that we're supposed to do something similar, that, okay, if we get angry and start killing each other, it's actually, it's Krishna's will because we're trying to be devotees, so it's okay if we fight sometimes and get violent. Not necessarily. We have to understand through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra and follow the instructions of the Guru. But we can understand that Krishna can do with us whatever he wants. So he can make us kill each other, kill ourselves. We see this in Chota Haridas, right? That he had this pastime that in order to instruct the conditioned souls about the danger of material affection and material lust, he had this pastime where this Chota Haridas went to a house of someone, and I'm not sure what he was doing there, but there was a young girl there, and he may have had a moment of being seemingly illusioned by Maya and feeling attracted to that person. And then Lord Chaitanya could understand what had happened. And when he came back, Lord Chaitanya had basically shunned him and exiled him from the association of devotees. And so Chota Haridas went and committed suicide after that. And this is all, again, according to the will of the Lord. And we could say that, wow, the Lord seems very cruel that he would make his devotee, kill himself over such a small offense. But we also learn later that Chota Haridas went back to Godhead. And this was actually in order to, again, to show this example and to teach a lesson to the conditioned souls, the danger of this, of being attracted by the material energy, and how serious it is to, when you're in the renounced order of life, that you should be renounced, and you should not have thoughts of material enjoyment, and not play with the idea of playing with Maya. We should be very afraid of Maya, like Prabhupada said. His disciples, one thing that's wrong with them is they're not afraid enough of Maya. So we see, again, these devotees are, ultimately you could say they're dying for Krishna, like Chota Haridas, these Yadus, and, Arjuna put his life on the line for Krishna. He was willing to die for Krishna. We see Bhishma, he died for Krishna. He was fighting on the other side. And in order to, again, facilitate Krishna's pastimes, and Krishna arranged for this whole battle of Kurukshetra to occur. And Bhishma was the most powerful, I believe, the most powerful out of all of them. And he had the mystic potency to be able to decide when he leaves his body and all these things. But again, to facilitate Krishna's pastimes, he ended up leaving his body on that battlefield and in the presence of Lord Krishna. And this is all just, again, for the pleasure of Krishna, and because this is his will. And so the pure devotee understands the will of Krishna and is able to act according to that, even if it means laying down their own life for Krishna. And so it doesn't mean that we, again, have to die for Krishna and go commit suicide or be violent or anything like that, kill anybody else. But the idea is that we can actually give our life, and the time that we do have in this body, this very rare human form of life, we can give that completely to Krishna and sacrifice that in that way and burn it in the fire of Sankirtan, burn it in the fire of this Sankirtan mission and preaching and spreading this knowledge to everyone that we can and helping in whatever way we can. And ultimately, it starts by this process of becoming this instrument that's being talked about in this verse. So, the pure devotees of the Lord, they are instruments. Let's see what it says here exactly. The devotees and associates of the Lord are completely surrendered souls. Thus, they are transcendental instruments in the hands of the Lord and can be used in any way the Lord desires. The pure devotees also enjoy such pastimes of the Lord because they want to see Him happy. So this is what it ultimately comes down to, is that the idea of our own happiness, our own sense gratification, all these things has to be put aside, and abandon. Once we understand from an intellectual standpoint that all of these things that we've been chasing from this, with this goal in mind, our own sense gratification, our own happiness, have led to nothing but misery. Once we can understand that philosophically and truly understand that and imbibe that, we put these things aside and we act, again, simply for the happiness of Krishna. The pure devotees also enjoy such pastimes of the Lord because they want to see him happy. So even if it means, again, seeing your entire dynasty kill each other, it makes Krishna happy because they're able to go back to their true abode, their eternal abode, and be with Krishna forever. So it's not that they, all killed each other and then they weren't with Krishna anymore. But again, this is all just for the pleasure of Krishna, and it also achieved this task of relieving the burden of the earth, like was spoken about before. So we're all servants by nature. We're all instruments by nature, and an important thing to do is to realize that and understand that. We're stuck in this material world because we think that we are the controller. We think that we can control something else to be an instrument of our own sense gratification, our own fulfilling our own desires. But if you look at even the most exalted positions in the material world, you could say like whatever, president of the United States or something like that, or big CEO, politicians, they call themselves public servants, right? So they understand that they are serving the citizens of the state. And nowadays it's very corrupted, and they might be actually acting for their own financial interest and whatever, money laundering, whatever they do. But ultimately, it's understood that that position, that post, is a post of service. And same with, again, being the CEO of a big company. If you're actually in that position, it's not that you're just enjoying and telling people to do this, do that. That is there, but ultimately, the buck stops with you in that position, and therefore you are having to serve the whole entire organization, and you're having to take care of all these people and make sure that they have a livelihood, make sure that they have income and job security, and you're serving. You're just completely serving. And then what to speak of at the job? As soon as these people come home, they are servants of their wife, their children, their dog, whatever it may be, and that big title of being president or CEO isn't so important anymore. They're just simply serving their family in that point. And so we can see that we're all servants. We can't escape this, and so we are all being used as instruments in some way or another. And we can see in history that people have been used in many different ways, in very undesirable ways as instruments. You could see just say like these people in Germany, they were just like normal people, right? And then Hitler came into power, and then they suddenly were used to do these very despicable, horrible things, atrocities, and they were used as instruments in that way by this evil man and this evil regime. So people are always instruments in some way or another, and for 99.9% of us, we're instruments of Maya. We're just being used by Maya and pulled by our senses in all these different ways. And so we're instruments of our senses. We're instruments of Maya. We're completely slaves to these things. But we can understand that the person that is playing the instrument is actually what's important. So if you have, just say, like a pen, if you give that pen to a 5-year-old, they might be able to like scribble some things or whatever on a piece of paper. And the parents might think it's very beautiful. But for everyone else, it seems like, okay, what is this? But if you give that same pen to a great author, this is, again, it's a mundane example, of course, but give it to a great author, they might be able to write some really amazing thing. They can move the pen in such a way that creates a very moving piece of work. Maybe creates like a best-selling book or something and makes millions of dollars and inspires people all over the world, changes people's lives, whatever it may be. So it's the same instrument, this pen, which it's neutral. It doesn't have any will of its own. It doesn't have any desire of its own necessarily. But it's simply being used as an instrument for whoever is picking it up and writing with it. So similarly, we can be an instrument of Maya or we can be an instrument of Krishna. And the difference is we have the ability, we have this minute independence. So we have the ability to have a will of our own, and we have our own desires and all these things. But what is ultimately understood, and what we can realize through this process of Krishna consciousness and reading these books, is that the constitutional position of a living entity, our constitutional position, is to be completely surrendered to Krishna, completely surrendered to his will, to his desires, and simply act according to what he wants. And by doing this, we can actually perfect ourselves. Because if you just think of an instrument, I used to play the saxophone, and there's a couple of aspects of it. Like there's this thing called a reed. So it's like a small piece of wood, a very thin piece of wood, and it has to be cut in a very precise way in order for it to vibrate when you blow air into the saxophone, and it vibrates in a certain way. So it has to be very certain thickness, like to the millimeter, less than that. And it's shaped in a certain way. And then you have the mouthpiece that has to be put on a certain way. And then you have the pads that they can become sticky, and they can make it harder to play smoothly, you could say. So all these things have to be perfectly in tune. The reed has to be just perfectly cut and perfect humidity. And then, the pads have to all be cleaned and nice, not sticky. And then at that point, the person that is playing the saxophone can play it nicely. Otherwise, it can be a detriment to the playing, and it can cause it to not sound as good as it should. So similarly, we are instruments, and ultimately we want to be played by Krishna. We want to be used by Krishna to perform whatever he desires, not what we desire. And by cleaning ourselves, this Cheto Darpana Marjanam, we can completely become this perfect instrument for Krishna to use. And another thing that's very interesting to me is that it's not that we can come in and clean our own hearts and completely make that instrument the perfect instrument for Krishna, and by our own endeavor we can just do it. We can somehow tweak everything in the perfect way that it can be used by Krishna. But it's that we have to rely completely on the mercy of Krishna, and that Krishna will actually see the sincerity of the devotee, and he will come into our heart, and he will personally cleanse our heart for us, and then he will take a seat on our heart. So it ultimately comes down to completely to the mercy, and it's not anything of our own endeavor that we can accomplish on our own. Of course, it requires us that we start and that we initiate that conversation. We initiate that reciprocal relationship with Krishna, and he will happily cooperate, because Krishna is just simply fulfilling whatever desires we have. So if our desire is to serve Krishna and to reinstate our true position as servants of him, he will facilitate that for us. He will arrange things for us. He will take 100 steps towards us when we take one step towards him. So it's simply about turning towards him and making that intention clear, and making it very clear to Krishna that we want to serve him. We want to be this instrument. We don't know how to do it on our own. We are struggling. We are drowning in this ocean of material existence, and we simply need his mercy. We need his help to actually, again, properly tune and maintain this instrument so that it can be played by Krishna, and it can be played very beautifully. And we can see so many examples. Of course, the very prominent one is Srila Prabhupada, that he was a perfect instrument for Krishna. And he even wrote this really beautiful prayer when he was on the Jaladuta, that the famous one, "O Lord, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance, O Lord. Make me dance as you like." Prabhupada is meditating on the fact that he's come to the West. He doesn't know what he's doing here. These people are completely covered by the modes of ignorance and passion. He's left Vrindavan, which was so nice, and he could have just stayed there and gone back to Godhead, no problem. And he had, fulfilled his spiritual master's order to a good extent. His spiritual master asked him to preach in the English language, and he had been writing books. He had been writing back to Godhead, and so he had done quite a lot. But Prabhupada understood the heart of his spiritual master. He understood Krishna as well, Krishna's desire, and Lord Chaitanya's desire that this holy name be chanted in every town and village all over the world. And so he took it to a level that was completely unfathomable to anybody else. And he did it in a way that, again, nobody saw coming, because you might see from a mundane perspective that this is seemingly an old man, he's 70 years old, he's coming to America, and this one lady told him, "Old man, you will die." So from a mundane perspective, from a materialistic perspective, he had no chance to do what he was trying to do. And even his own god brothers and all this stuff, they didn't really support him. And there was this whole conception of rotten grihasta, that the real preachers were the sannyasis. They were living full-time, doing this. And he was just a rotten grihasta. And he was just kind of neglected or discarded in that way. But now we see, many years later, the impact that Prabhupada has had, and that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, right, that when the time comes, he will do it all by himself, something like that. And so we see that, and the reason that this happened was because Prabhupada was a perfect instrument. He was that perfectly clean, tuned, precisely crafted instrument to be played in the hands of Krishna, to be played in the hands of his spiritual master. And of course, he in his humility, he gives credit. He gave all credit to his spiritual master, which is the proper attitude that he taught us. And he came and he opened 108 temples all over the world. He made thousands of disciples, people that were living in such horrible conditions, doing such horrible things, and he turned them into Vaishnavas. And not just any Vaishnavas. I mean, he turned them into very empowered preachers that to this day they're still going out preaching. Devotees that have joined when they were, like Mukunda Datta Prabhu joined when he was like 16, was it, or 14? Something like that, very young, 15? 15. And, his whole life he's been just preaching, spreading this mission, going everywhere, and, doing scholarly work and all these things. We see Brigupati Prabhu, he's been distributing books his whole life for like 50 years, something like that. We see my own Guru Maharaj, is, again, joined when he was 18, I believe, and whole life just non-stop preaching and just full dedication, full-on dedication, no swaying, no time off or anything like that. So it's really a fantastic thing that, Prabhupada took these Westerners that had no experience, had never heard of Krishna, had no desire to surrender to Krishna at all, and he took them from this state of, many of them were hippies living on the street, addicted to drugs, addicted to sex, and he took them and made them completely clean of those sinful activities. And not only that, then he empowered them to become lifelong preachers, empowered preachers, and great devotees in their own right. So you can see the quality of a guru by the quality of his disciples. And so Prabhupada's obviously a world-conquering acharya. So he was that perfect instrument, and this is ultimately the goal, is to be that instrument. And people think, like I said, people have been used for so many different undesirable things. So the idea of being used by someone else seems very scary, very undesirable. No, I don't want to be used. I want to have my own independence. But one thing that these people aren't considering is that they are being used by their own senses, by their own mind. And because they so closely identify with those things, they think they are the senses, they think they are the mind, they think it's okay, but they don't understand that there is a difference. So if they can understand that difference, that they're the spirit soul, and that these desires of the mind and the senses are not actually what they want, they can start to make some progress. And the other thing is that being used by Krishna isn't an exploitive experience like being used in the material world is. If you say, I was used in the material world, it's a very bad thing. Like I was giving the example of all the normal Germans that became, Nazis and killed so many Jews. They were used in that way, and they just became kind of instruments in that in the Holocaust. But being used by Krishna is very nice, actually, because actually for Krishna, his devotees are dearer than his own self. So when he's using them, he's actually giving it so much pleasure to them. And because, again, the devotee, the living entity's constitutional position is to be in that role of serving Krishna, they become completely fulfilled and happy just by doing that, by being used as that instrument. And again, we see that in so many devotees that when they come into this process, I mean, you can experience it yourself when you come into the process of Krishna consciousness, and when you actually just try to be an instrument for Krishna, you become very happy. There's this, just popped in my head, this video of, it was, I guess this was, last marathon after maybe like Christmas Eve or like the day before, something like that. And some of the devotees went to the airport. Tapas Prabhu was there, Suresh Prabhu was there, and a couple other devotees were there. And then I think Namanihara Prabhu were there, right? Yeah. So then when they got in the car and drove back, they sent a video of their score. They're like saying how many books they did. They did like 50, 55, 60. They did so many books, and they were so ecstatic in that video because they had just completely given themselves to Krishna. They just became an instrument for Krishna. And it is, towards the end of the marathon, so it's like there's even more bliss there because it's been so much, hitting the pavement. And so there was a very relishable moment that they'd just been out there working all day. Again, from the materialistic standpoint, you're, in the cold, you're outside, you're on the street just like talking to strangers, trying to like hustle some bhakti stacks. Like, you're not making any money for yourself, and you're probably hungry. And so all these things, from a, materialistic standpoint seem very undesirable, but they were completely blissed out in ecstasy, and happier than any materialist could ever be, because they had just given themselves fully to Krishna in that way. And so this surrendering is a continuous process. It's meant to go on, and every moment we're meant to surrender to Krishna and continue to renew that. And we can always choose either if we're going to serve Maya or we're going to serve Krishna in any moment. It can always, it's a very dangerous position we're in. We're on this path of devotional service, but we haven't made it all the way yet. So we have to be very careful and very diligent about always choosing to serve Krishna and serve Krishna's senses. This Atmendriya Priti Vancha Tare Bade Kam, Krishnendriya Priti Eche Tare Prema Nam, that satisfying one's own senses is considered lust, and the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is actual love. So we should be acting in love, real love, by attempting to satisfy Krishna's senses. And I'm running out of time here. I'm supposed to end at 8:30, but one point I really wanted to make was this at the end of the purport here. Devotees of the Lord never assert independent individuality. On the contrary, they utilize their individuality in pursuit of the desires of the Lord, and this cooperation of the devotees with the Lord makes a perfect scene of the Lord's pastimes. I found this really beautiful. This makes a perfect scene of the Lord's pastimes. So, when all the devotees are cooperating together and they're not acting of their own materialistic desires, they're acting simply for the desires of the spiritual master and the Lord, it creates a perfect scene of the Lord's pastimes. It's like a very harmonious situation. It's just like, again, if we're going back to this analogy of instruments, the entire orchestra is there and they're all in tune together. And in an orchestra, you have the conductor, so the conductor can be seen as Krishna or the spiritual master. And this is the person that everyone is following in order to create this harmony of the orchestra. And if any of them decides that, I want to have a nice solo here or whatever, they just want to play their own thing, it's going to sound horrible. So in this way, devotees are cooperating, and they're all perfect. As we become purified, when everyone is a pure devotee, then they're all perfect instruments, and they're acting exactly according to Krishna's desire. And there's complete harmony. There's no disarray. There's no conflict. And this is actually the peace formula that's spoken about. That we can understand that Krishna is the ultimate well-wisher of everyone, and that by surrendering unto him, we can actually have real peace in the world, real peace in society. So I thought that was really beautiful. And, it's even more amazing because devotees, the living entities, are conscious beings that have their own, they can bring their own flavor to things. They can act with, they can actually act, whereas an instrument itself, like a violin or something, it's just dead matter. It can't actually do anything. But the beauty of being an instrument for Krishna and a devotee is that you can do something that will please Krishna, and then it'll, it's like a reciprocal relationship you have, so it's not that we have we're just like a dead stone or something like that, but we have this reciprocal relationship with Krishna, and so we're his instrument, and we can bring him pleasure and happiness by doing things that please him, and it's always like a surprising thing. It's always like there's always something new. It's not just like he's just like picking up a dead object and just like doing something with it and putting it down, where we have that ability to reciprocate with him. So, okay, yeah, I kind of ran out of time, but if there's any comments, questions, or corrections, please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Just 2 comments. Anyways, it's interesting that, because the previous verse mentions that, I guess, so this verse in context, Krishna spoke this after the battle of Kurukshetra. So anyways, he was kind of like, even then, kind of like hinting at what would happen. So just kind of, I guess, one detail, because we're talking about the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. It says different things. I was looking at it, but sometimes acharyas are like that. Like one acharya will say like one thing, and one will say another thing. But I definitely remember reading that specifically like the most of the Yadus that were taken to Prabhashetra, that those were like demigods and things like that. So they were just returned back to like their positions. Whereas like in Dwarka, those that left, like they were like eternal associates and things like that. That was mentioned. But it's interesting because, I mean, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur makes the point that they were like inimical and different things. He gives like a purport. I was going to read it, but there's not so much time. But he makes that point. But anyways, Jiva Goswami makes another point that like they should never be considered irreligious. So it's kind of like how to like balance all those kind of points. But anyways, whenever I first heard about that, just an interesting point about how like they had like Krishna's association and things like that, but then like without that, how they would be like such a burden and problem to like the earth. But anyways, I'm kind of keep it there with that for time, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Anything else? No. Mataji's.
So you were speaking how when you it's love when you satisfy the desires of Krishna, and it's lust when you try to satisfy your own desires. So when you are, say for instance, if you're doing a service and you want to keep doing it and you mostly want to get better, but then, it might get to your head like, oh, I'm doing such a nice job, or I want to, do more. Of course you want to do more for Krishna, but then how in that do you not get to like, oh, I should get like, what I'm trying to say, like how do you continue knowing that what you desire is for Krishna and not for your own self when you're doing something constantly?
Yeah, good point. Well, you have to make sure that what you're doing is in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, that what it is according to the desire of your Guru. And if you're kind of speculating that, oh, I think Krishna would like this, I think Krishna would like that, but you have no Shastric basis for that, you have no basis from that from other devotees, then you can kind of understand that it's of your own desires. Whereas if you're acting, again, with your own propensities and your own skills and your own your own talents in Krishna's service in a way, again, that is pleasing to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, then you can understand that what you're doing is right. So, and another point is that Krishna doesn't like when his devotees become proud. We see that many times that, like the gopis became proud, and he left them, and then there's another example I was thinking of earlier. But anyways, you can see that when any time that a devotee of Krishna becomes proud, he doesn't like that, and he kind of puts them in their place. And we understand again, Lord Chaitanya, Chanadapi Sunichena Tarorhipa Suhishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sarahi. We should be humbler than a blade of grass, more tolerant than the tree, and not desire respect, but give respect to everyone else. And this is very pleasing to Krishna, because it's not that the thing is, Krishna is also very humble, so it's not that he's I'm the best one and you got to be humble, but he's also very humble, and all pure devotees are humble. Radharani herself is extremely humble. She thinks that all the other devotees are more exalted than her. So we have to be in that kind of consciousness of humility, and not get proud of our service and think that we're doing such great things. These other devotees, they're not doing as good as I am. And as long as it's in line with, again, what the Guru says and the other sadhus and Shastra, then it's bona fide. So it's a good desire to have that, to want to be better in your service and improve and do things better and be excited about your service. It's all very good things. So, okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar Krishna Balaram Gaur Nitai Nisimade Bhagavan ki jai.